Hello, everybody, and welcome to a typically just a bitter episode, but this one's actually bitter cold and frosty and frozen, as you might expect, for the reason why I had to leave New York early, and the sad reason that Paul actually made it home safely, although we were all expecting he would not. But how's it going, Paul?
You know, I don't know. The ride home was okay, but it was snowing a lot. And as I got on the bus, which was a 30-minute walk from the hotel, and opened my bag, I realized I left my iPad in the hotel room. So that was good. But
Congratulations.
fortunately, we have some coworkers who are still there. So I called the hotel, and George has it now. So
Well,
I assume he'll do the right thing with it, not reformat it and just give it to one of his kids. But
or donate it.
yeah,
But,
I guess we'll see.
Before we dive into there, folks, today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out at cloudberrylab.com/FRD for free license offer for Thurrott users. And for some reason, Skype is putting Paul Jr. up there, even though I turned that off because Skype doesn't like to remember settings.
That is amazing.
I'm going to have to fix that here while Paul meanders on. But check them out, Cloudberry Lab. Good for backing up to Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, anything you want. Bring your own data, protect against ransomware. Do it all a hell of a lot easier, to be honest. So, while
Brad?
I am... Yep.
What the hell is that thing on your desk?
We will get to this. But,
Okay. I mean, other than a doorstop.
well, hold on. I got to fix that stupid issue. So talk about something else while I fix that.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Yesterday, Microsoft revealed that it will indeed ship PWA, Progressive Web App Support, in the coming version of Windows 10. I was getting a little nervous about this because the support is built into the OS, but they've never really discussed it like they kind of promised they would. And then suddenly yesterday they did. So what this means is that properly written progressive web apps, which are, web apps, web pages, whatever, they have a manifest file that can identify the fact that they want to be included in stores. And if they do that, Microsoft will just put it in the Windows Store, and or the Microsoft Store, I guess, as we now call it. So you'll be able to discover them very easily now in Windows 10 going forward. So I'm curious to see how this goes. But the interesting bit to me is that in this blog post, which is aimed at developers, right? They announced this in the Microsoft Edge developer blog. There was a little section on, PWA versus UWP, UWP being the native app platform on Windows 10. And they didn't really make a good case for UWP, folks. It kind of amounted to if you have some need to do native Windows 10 stuff only and you're starting a new app, you might want to go UWP. For the other 99.99% of the world, not how Microsoft worded it, but let's be honest, you should use PWA instead. Now, there's special cases, obviously. People are writing games or whatever. They're going to still want to go native. But, the big problem on Windows 10 today is that no one is making major new apps on the platform. They're making major new apps on the web. They're making them on mobile, things like Android and iOS. And so this is literally a platform. It's sort of the Java thing, but writ large, where you can write once and have an app that runs everywhere. And because things have modernized nicely since the 1990s, that means you can have things like native app features like notification support in Windows 10. Obviously works offline, blah, 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 whatever. But these things can be native or like native-ish at least, but it will seem native on any platform on which they run. Also, by the way, I didn't have this in my article, but Apple revealed this week very subtly through its developer notes for iOS, I think 11.3, that they are also formally supporting PWAs in their platforms as well.
But Paul,
I know.
And here is the crux, because I very much tweeted out. I said, "Rip UWP."
Yep.
And I still firmly believe that. And people are like, "No, you're so..."
Yeah, people are freaking out over
You're
this.
so wrong, Brad. But here is my argument that nobody has really successfully combated. If you are going to write an app for Windows 10, if you're writing one for Windows 10, and you want native capabilities, you are going to run Win32 because Win32 gives you more capabilities. If it's only running on Windows 10, there's no need to do UWP. And if you are going to write something for the store and you're also writing it for other platforms, you wouldn't go UWP either. You would go PWA because that is a much better platform for that. Now, granted, if you're writing something high intensive, maybe UWP, but again, I would default to Win32 if you're only writing it for Windows. UWP to me, and I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it died a long time ago, personally. It died when they built these bridges, because that's when Microsoft started saying you can bring things into the store that we traditionally didn't design UWP for. But now that mobile's dead, now that we know that people aren't going to run this on Xbox, what does it matter?
Yeah, I think people get too hung up on the app platform part of it, because UWP, well, maybe what we should say is this platform is a little bigger than that. The store is more important than UWP, right?
I fully agree.
And yeah, they figure, the promise of the store is that it's curated, it's trustworthy. The applications you get there are going to run to a certain level of performance and aren't going to degrade your PC performance over time, that kind of stuff. That's important. Yeah, UWP, I mean, you could argue Windows Phone not succeeding was one of the big nails in that coffin. Like you said, the desktop bridge and the other bridges, another big nail in that coffin. PWA, I think, is the final nail in that coffin, however you choose to decide these things. But yeah, there's a lot of delusion, in the Windows community, unfortunately. And anyone who thinks that UWP is going to take up at this point I don't think gets it. But the other way, you got to remember, this is a developer thing. And as a developer, what you're looking for is the broadest possible reach. And you don't want to do plumbing work. You want to just build your app and build your experiences and not have to worry about the back end on every single platform. And if you're making a decision about which platform or platforms to support, you can make really compelling cases. Number one, for the web, which is the biggest platform by far. It's several billion users. The number two would be some combination of Android and or iOS. Those are both in the billions, range. But very engaged user bases, right, which is part of the important deal there. And then number three, after those, would be Windows, but not Windows 10, right? Windows, what you're saying, which is Win32 essentially. In other words, if you are going to choose Windows, for the most part, you want that thing to run on Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10, not just Windows 10. And that's one of those decisions Microsoft made with the platform, was to drive people to Windows 10, Windows 8 originally, but now Windows 10. They made that platform artificially only work on that one operating system version. If UWP had been made to work on Windows 7 and other Windows versions, we might be having a different conversation today. But that was what they did.
Yep. But Paul, the people will say, because they did in my time.
Oh, they do. Yeah.
They said, but PWAs are supported in Windows 8, and those never took off. Why are they going to take off now?
Well, for a number of reasons. I mean, Microsoft is formally adding support for Store for the first time. On Android, you can install PWAs if you browse the web. There'll be a little pop-up, and you can do it from there. That's fine. And honestly, there's a debate to be had over what kind of discoverability makes more sense. There's some evidence to suggest that, Store visits and app downloads are kind of going downhill from a, apps per phone kind of perspective. That people are kind of not necessarily browsing on stores anymore. Although, obviously Apple and Google just announced their year-end results for both their app stores, and those seem pretty healthy to me. But whatever. This effort has been so well received at Google, which is the original platform kind of maker and supporter of this technology, that they'll be adding it to Android as well. And so it's very interesting. PWA, we don't know how Apple's going to support it, but PWA has been an interesting example of companies that are otherwise competitors working together on a standard because they all agree that this is the future. So I think politically, Microsoft is not going to come out and say UWP is dead. They can't say that, right? And it technically isn't dead in the same sense that traditional, in other words, non-core versions of .NET or WPF or Win32, like you said, or whatever technology you want to pull out of the little bin of things that people don't really use that much anymore. It's Microsoft. They're going to support it, for a long time, of course. But I fully expect Microsoft to embrace PWA internally as well. And I sometimes wonder if some of the water treading that we see with Microsoft and apps on their own platforms has something to do with this shift.
Yeah, because there's multiple benefits. First off, it gets edge usage. People are that's going to help them drive adoption there, and Sets is going to help that as well. And I want to be real clear. People are going to look at us and say, hey, they're just trashing Windows. Absolutely not. This makes me more optimistic about the success of the Windows Store than anything else Microsoft has done. They're embracing the standard. They're getting the apps into the store. To me, might be one of the tipping points that makes the Windows Store a very vibrant and usable platform for everybody. I'm very optimistic about that. This is a benefit to the Microsoft end user. The developer is going to go through another transition, but if they're a Windows developer lifelong, this is probably the 19th transition they've gone through framework, so this is no big deal. They've done this.
Sure.
You know, they put another notch on the belt, says that one failed, we're moving on. But
you know what, though? You just said something that's actually kind of profound, because what you're hinting at is something profound, which I think is very important to remember, which is that the original goal of Windows 8, right, and the Windows Store platform at the time, which has kind of evolved into Windows 10 and the Microsoft Store and the UWP platform, was to bring mobile technologies to Windows. You don't have to think too hard to realize that they have been working on that general thing for a long time. In fact,
Absolutely.
You could look at always connected PCs and see that as part of that continuum, sorry to use that word, of that effort, right? PWA is absolutely part of it. But it's funny because I think this is the one that's going to stick. Microsoft is not alone in doing this. Google is combining the Android app platform and Google Play Store with its Chromebooks, Chrome OS. Apple is rumored to be bringing iPad apps to the Mac. These companies all have exactly the same problem. They have this desktop operating system that is not as popular as mobile app platforms. So what do we do? You know, there are different ways you can do it. Apple has moved very slowly. They brought ideas from iOS to Mac OS X, but re-implemented them. Now they might be literally bringing their mobile app platform to the Mac. Microsoft has done it with Windows 8 and Windows 10. Google has done it, like I said, with Chrome and with Android. And this is it's an industry-wide thing, folks. It's not about hating Windows or hating Microsoft or not liking their strategy or anything like that. Like it is very clear that Microsoft was generally right to pursue this thing, mobile into Windows. We can argue about the particulars. Windows RT is one example of a very bad failure. Windows Phone obviously did not work out in Continuum, whatever. But I think this was the one that makes sense because it's not just Microsoft doing it, and it will benefit Windows, like you said.
Yep. I'm very happy by this announcement. I think this is the right move. No, neither one of us are saying this is bad. This is going to end poorly for the company. No, this is very much
the point of my headline for this was, I'm paraphrasing, but I believe the headline was, yes, PWA is going to kill UWP, period. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay to get rid of something that wasn't working. Microsoft, give them some credit and give us some credit for sort of noticing this. I mean, they're not leaving people stranded. They have provided so many different ways for developers to get their code bases on Windows 10, and for developers who have come up in the world through .NET and the various permutations of the APIs and frameworks that sit on top of .NET, like WPF, and by the way, UWP, and provided them with a runway where they can take those skills and apply them to other technologies as they come along. But on the flip side, this is also a way to bring in a much broader world of developers to the Windows platform because, like I said, they would ignore it otherwise. When you only have limited resources and time and whatever, and you have to make a choice, Windows is down the list, Yeah. And this is just a net pot. This is how you get those guys in here. This is really, really important.
And the one thing, because we could probably talk about this for hours, is that when it comes to picking how you're going to develop an app for whatever platform, there's a very big incentive to build a PWA. Very big. Because to your point, it's going to work natively on iOS. It works on Android. It works everywhere. There's a big incentive to run Win32. You can get native integrations. You have more control. You have more API access. You can get more performance than the Windows Store. I know somebody's going to argue on me on that, but generally speaking, that's true. The incentive to build a UWP is what?
Especially when you're coming, I'm going to create a new app, and my new app is going to be a whatever, like a to-do app or a calendar app or like an RSS reader, all those kind of, standard examples of something you might create. Where are you gonna put that thing? At what point does Windows 10 UWP enter the equation? Like for most developers, the truth is it doesn't. And I mean, I realize there's some small subset of the developer world that is focused on the Microsoft stuff, and what I mean by that is new app work on the Microsoft stack. There's really not a lot of it, not compared to these other platforms.
I know what I'm about to say is going to sting for some people.
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even yourself, Paul, but Microsoft on the consumer side does not have an ecosystem. They don't though. They
That's a
have
gauntlet.
they have a very good desktop operating system, but
Yeah.
how many
Okay.
people
Yeah.
how many people are saying, "Gosh, you know what? I've got this app here. I want to put it on my Xbox." Well, we know Xbox is a very small subset. You can't do that with iOS because it's a completely different app. It's a completely different framework. So there's no developer ecosystem for the consumer side, and that's okay.
Right.
But that was the benefit of UWP, was that it was going to work on mobile. It's going to work on HoloLens that isn't shipping to anybody. It's going to work on Xbox. But
Right.
even
I always
look
said,
at Spotify. Look at
for
Spotify.
UWP to be truly universal, it should have run on Android, right?
Yeah.
That would at least given them kind of a bigger chunk of the pie. I realize it's not truly universal, but PWA is truly universal. And the way that Microsoft is integrating this into the store, there's absolutely no reason why these apps couldn't run on Xbox. And that would ultimately benefit that platform as well. Because like you said, if it's like the examples I used, the To-Do app or whatever, I think I'm going to make a UWP app. And I'm also going to take the time to port it to the Xbox. Like seriously, like who would do that?
Even on that, Paul, Spotify wrote 3 different apps.
Yeah.
They didn't even
there you
take
go.
advantage of that.
Right. That's right. That's true. That's true.
So.
Yeah, and they're an entertainment app, and also, by the way, a company that had some 1.2 billion in revenues in the previous quarter, whatever it was. Like, this isn't Bob sitting over there in his mother's basement wondering how he's going to break free and rate the next great app. This is a big established company, and I just remind everybody their little store Frankenstein experiment thing didn't arrive until sometime last year. I don't remember exactly what the timing on that was, but they didn't make a store app. They made they converted their desktop app because obviously path of least resistance.
Well, as a timely segue, one of the reasons why I am home right now is that if you look behind me, this is a picture from my deck. We have an outdoor table. You can see these icicles, and those are not naturally, well, I guess they are naturally forming, but typically you don't see icicles like this because we got a ton of ice last night and a ton of snow. And Paul, as we were sitting here, yesterday, Paul and I were sitting in a room, and Delta called me and said, "Hey, your flight, which was going to be at 2 o'clock to go home, we're giving a hazard waiver, which means you can switch to any other flight for free. It's not looking so good." But and then they said, "You know what? We could put you on 7 o'clock that evening."
It's like I got to leave now.
No, 7 o'clock tonight, not last night.
Oh, tonight. Oh, no, you don't want that.
And they said, "Well, we can do that, but." I was like, that doesn't feel right. And I just got the message that 7 o'clock flight was canceled. So I would have
yikes.
So if I didn't...
Well, you would have gotten some tots, by the way, if you'd stayed. I mean, I would have
gotten a lot of tots because I would have been there until tomorrow, at least.
Also would have enjoyed the restaurant and the hotel, by the way.
That's what George said.
Yeah, I didn't partake in this, but I was with them when the wood-fired pizza thing that came out of there seriously was legit impressive. It was really, really good looking.
And for the people wondering, we were in New York for company meetings, and we'll have more about that later. We're not really ready to kind of dive into the decisions that were made. We're still finalizing that stuff, but we know that question will come up. But in the near future, I would say, I'm going to give a long timeline.
Would you say in the current quarter?
Yeah, I was going to say by the end of the month, we'll at least have some very candid discussion about what was going on.
There's some good news there. Good news.
But speaking
to be clear, you're not speaking about anything scary. Like, this is good stuff happening.
Yeah, this is good stuff. Speaking of what could be good stuff is, Paul, this thing showed up at my house actually yesterday while I was gone.
It looks like a watch on the front.
Well, it's kind of it's got a spinny dial.
Yeah.
And, so what this is the Voice One smart speaker from KITT Sound.
Oh yeah, those guys.
Yeah. That. Well, so as I learned, based on the very nice letter they wrote on the inside of the box for me, is that they are a UK-based company, and they're trying to expand into the US. And so they sent me this nice review speaker. Now, the benefit of the speaker is that I can't say its name, but it has Amazon's Echo, that digital assistant, built in. And so I will be curious to see how this thing sounds, especially compared to the Sonos One. And I'll have a review, I don't know, in the coming weeks. But this thing showed up yesterday. You can't see it because it's not plugged in. But what's somewhat disappointing, I guess, is if you can see it here on this thing. There's a blue circle light on the inside of this ring. Paul, do you know any other personal digital assistants that make use of a blue circle?
No, I do not.
Yeah, me neither. But that would have been a nice little integration with this one too. But I haven't plugged it in, so I can't even comment on audio quality or anything else. But I mean, it's not super heavy, if I'm honest, which generally means that there's not large magnets, which generally means that it's not going to have superb sound. But it does have a stain-resistant nano coating, according to
it looks, I don't know. It looks like the electronics version of a B movie, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I don't even know the price point. I mean, if this thing's $50, that's a whole different thing. If it's $199, so
right.
we will get to there. And speaking of getting to there, if you missed the news yesterday, Microsoft is getting quite aggressive with OneDrive for Business. They are offering a free, basically free in quotations service for enterprise customers. So if you are using Box, Dropbox, or Google Cloud Drive, and you have a current contract, Microsoft will give you OneDrive for Business for free for the remaining term of your contract if you sign up between now and June 30th, which is their fiscal year end. But Paul, there's one caveat that you can only get this service if you have more than 500 customers.
Oh, yeah.
So
right.
they're only going after that top. They're trying to take the head off.
They're going to make this worthwhile.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So
500 customers. What? It's like 500 seats. Like, so what size company is 500? That must be like mid-market, I guess.
Yeah, that's got to be
mid.
And you got to figure that if there's 500 seats, that company has significantly more than 500 people, because not everybody's going to need access.
I mean, think about with the annual cost. We demonstrated 2 days ago, or yesterday, I guess it was, that we cannot do math. So I don't mean to throw this by you off the top of my head, but 500 seats times what, roughly $100 per person or something for Dropbox Business or something per year. It's some big bucks.
Yeah.
Or as we would have said yesterday, $100.
Yes. We were having some math trouble yesterday, and the answer was always $100, which didn't make sense.
It was serious, like multiple step algebra, like multiple, I don't know what you call those, parts of the equation. And no matter how convoluted or stupid it was, the answer would come down to 100. It's always like 100.
Yeah.
It's failed at math.
Yeah. Yep. But, speaking of failing, Paul, I'm sure this image will surface. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing Paul definitely learned about Brad this week is that Brad cannot draw anything.
I mean, to the tune of I think the way I said it at the time was, if you were my child, I would have brought you to the doctor if you brought this picture home. Would have been like, something's wrong.
I'm not going to switch the camera off, that's the one that hurts.
Do you have the picture of the pig?
No, I mean, no.
Oh, I put mine on Instagram, but I would love for people to see yours.
Look, all I'm saying is it could be a pig, fox, cow, any animal with four
legs. What are you talking about? It could be any of those things. It didn't look anything like an animal. It had like a little It looked like
that does it for today, folks. We'll catch you.
It's like when it almost looked like a little wig, like what like judges used to wear white wigs or whatever. Instead of like a pig has like a curly tail, his head like it was kind of like a broken looking thing like this. We gotta find that picture. It was really good. I think so. Oh my god. I'm sorry.
You were ridiculous.
It was a fun picture.
I don't know if that's how I would describe it. I might have used different words. You got anything else for today, Paul?
I don't know what I'm doing. I took the bus home. I got up at 5:30 in the morning and took the early bus. Oh, this probably happened after you left. I decided to take the earlier bus. So I actually got home around 10:30, whatever it was. And I have to do Windows Weekly today. So I think as soon as that's over, I'm just going to slide under the desk and go to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my day.
Well, good for you.
How about you? Sorry.
No, nothing really. I mean, everybody's home. Nobody's leaving the house.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
All right. I got a shovel. That's another thing I got to do today.
Yeah, I already did that. I threw some salt down too, because, you get this much snow and then this much ice underneath. And
oh yeah. No, it's already turned to rain. It's going to be the apocalypse out there tonight when people drive home from work.
Yeah. My daughter goes outside. She's like, why is the snow crunchy?
Yes. Well, why is there a van in the ditch?
Well, that's Comcast, sweetie, and we don't talk to those people.
Exactly.
Actually, we don't even have Comcast. We have what was Time Warner here, and it's now Spectrum. But
Yes.
yeah, no, we use Phi Optics anyways. That's whatever. All right, folks, that does it for today. As a reminder, today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD to learn more about their backup services and protect yourself from ransomware. We'll catch you right back here tomorrow.